This is AJ Mumm from the Polk County Emergency Operations Center. Welcome to our fourth session. Glad that everybody could make it. Appreciate you taking some time midday and sharing your lunch with us figuratively. So we're going to go ahead and get started. We've got a lot of great information to share. If you have questions, comments, suggestions, we would encourage you to either use the chat feature or to unmute your mic at the end. We're going to save our questions and comments to the end so we make sure we can get through the information because I know people have a closed stop at 1 o'clock to get on to other things in their day. So with that, we'll proceed here and ask our commission chairperson, Chief John Takip, to say a few words to open us up. Thanks.
Thanks, AJ. I'm John Takip. I'm the executive committee's chair, and so chair for the commission. Want to thank everybody for taking your time today to participate in the partnership meeting. These meetings have been going on for a few years, and I think they've shown themselves to be of some value. It's a pretty broad brush over an hour. Not so much that to describe that emergency management is that thing over there that you call, but to kind of walk through the process that is how we do things together. And more importantly, to see what questions you have and to give you an overview of kind of the return on investment and the synergy that comes out of emergency management. So I want to thank you for taking your time, and I'll probably have some words at the end. So back to you, AJ. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We will start with some introductions here in the room. I'll pan over just a second here. Patty?
Good afternoon. I'm Patty Nordmeyer. I'm the office specialist here with Polk County Emergency Management. I've been here almost 3 years, and some of my duties are working on the budget and grants.
Good afternoon. I'm Deanne Sesker, and I've been with the agency since fall of 2019. I am responsible for ESF 8, Public Health and Medical Services, as well as the Training and Exercise Program.
Hi, my name is Tracy Bearden. I'm the 911 coordinator. I've been with the agency since June of 2016. I work with the 3 PSAP directors, our public safety answering points, and for Westcom, Des Moines, and Polk County Sheriff's Office, and I'm also serve as one of the fiscal agents for the service board.
Not sure, Cam, are you online? Oh, he had to take a call, so we'll move over to Dutch.
Hi, Dutch Geisinger. I'm the Deputy Director for Polk County Emergency Management. I handle a lot of special projects. I act as AJ when he's missing for whatever reason. We do a lot of training, education, outreach programs, speaking engagements, those types of things are just part of the duties for the Deputy Director.
And Cameron Stuffelbeam is the 6th person of our team. Obviously, he had to not be able to be here right now. He stepped away. I think he may be able to join us as we move through the rest of our presentation here. We'll start by putting up our mission, protect the whole community. The things that we do are to coordinate, support, and integrate activities. You will hear that theme throughout the next several minutes. We are focused on all phases of the disaster cycle, from mitigating, preventing, reducing the risk through preparedness, response, and recovery. And we take an all hazards approach. You'll see some of those same themes reflected here in our key principles. The comprehensiveness. We'll talk in a moment about how our foundation is really establishes a risk-driven approach. Almost everything we do, we try to build a team atmosphere, remain flexible, and remain anticipatory. Our integration provides a unity of effort among multiple disciplines, multiple jurisdictions, which is also related to our mission of coordinating. And throughout, we do our best to remain professional, knowledge-based, and uphold the ethical standards that the community expects of us. I know many of you on the call are familiar with emergency management. Those of you that really want to go into depth about what we do and how we go about it and what some of those mandates are that sort of shape our mission can find that information in the Code of Iowa, Chapter 29C. It establishes the local emergency management commissions and lays out those duties and responsibilities. Further detail is available in Iowa Administrative Code, Section 605. One of the things that the Code of Iowa establishes is this sort of structure to our governance. The Emergency Management Commission is made up of a representative from the County Board of Supervisors, the county sheriff, and mayors from each of the cities within the county. Oftentimes, those officials, they're allowed by law to make an appointment to represent them. However, if it is a budget approval or budget amendment matter, those actions must come from elected officials. So we have a nice blend of elected officials and key appointed officials that really serves us well as staff. We have, truthfully enjoyed working for the commission, as well as the disciplines that are represented on that commission. Meet quarterly. You can see here the months of February, May, August, and November. Those dates coincide to be the third Wednesday of each of those months, and our meetings start at 2 p.m. The commission, also the bylaws of the commission establish an executive committee. We meet with that executive committee, which you can see there, the representatives on the right. Chief DeKip as the chairperson, Sheriff Kevin Schneider as the vice chairperson, Chief James Clack from Ankeny at large, Chief Chad McCluskey from Windsor Heights is also an at-large member, as is Chief Jim Clark from Johnston Grimes. And so they help set that agenda for the full commission meetings. This executive committee is elected to one-year terms, and those elections occur in May, and the term begins on July 1st. You know, we always hear some in the community that believe that we are an extension of FEMA or some state agency. That's not entirely true. Obviously, we enjoy working with our federal and state partners, but there is no solid line organizationally that ties us to those agencies. So while we try to align our programs and we have periodically benefited from federal and state, grant programs, there are no direct ties between our local agency and the state and federal agencies. You know, we really focus at the local level. This is where we believe the rubber really meets the road. This is where we're able to enjoy those relationships among a wide variety of organizations, as you see on this slide. And there's probably double this if you added up all of the opportunities that we have to work with agencies and organizations. But these are the ones that we have regular meetings with. We're honored to be invited to sit at the table and mostly listen and understand, but also offer our support and coordination when it's appropriate. And so that all of that adds up to, you know, a building of trust and relationships and better understanding and teamwork ultimately amongst all of us. As most public agencies, we are responsible to the public by holding open meetings, having open records, and conducting our budget process in a transparent and open way. That includes the use of a public hearing for our budget. While this today is not an official public hearing, we wanted to provide a preview of that budget. The official public hearing will be in 2 weeks from today at our 2 p.m. meeting of the full commission. Here's that preview of the proposed budget. On the far right is our current fiscal year. We put that up there to provide some context, some comparison to our proposed fiscal year, which would be starting on July 1st. We are estimating that our beginning fund balance is in the neighborhood of $409,000. We expect approximately $1 million in revenue from a variety of sources, including the Board of Supervisors. The Board of Supervisors provides support in the amount of about $387,000. As Tracy will talk about here in a second, we have a relationship between the Emergency Management Commission and the 911 Service Board that's formalized through a 2080 agreement, and that provides about $115,000 worth of support to the commission's budget. The commission and its members also have a 2080 agreement, and that 2080 agreement says that each of the jurisdictions, a part of the commission, will provide funding support in the amount of 50 cents per capita of their population. Many may also be surprised to know that the countywide hazmat contract is through our agency and through our budget. There's an agreement between Polk County and the city of Des Moines, and particularly the fire department, to provide those countywide hazmat services, and that's paid for, at least a portion of those costs are paid for through that agreement with Polk County. About $40,000 in grants, about $400 in miscellaneous receipts and reimbursements that we expect to total that approximate $1 million of expected revenue. On the expense side, personnel, that's our greatest asset and is also the greatest portion of our expenses. About $725,000, about $1,200 in grants, a little over $7,000 in pencils and paper and other supplies, and services, which would include the hazmat contract I mentioned earlier, and other agreements such as our maintenance agreement for our EOC technology and DLAN, our incident management software system. So as you do the math, you can tell that we are expected to have expenses that are slightly greater than our revenue. So we would be dipping into that designated reserve a little bit. And that leaves us with a proposed ending fund balance around $366,000. Again, if you have any questions, please type those in or make yourself a note or unmute yourself at the end. We'd be happy to address any budget questions at the end of our prepared material. You saw there that our grants was a relatively low amount, and we would certainly agree with you if you compared it to our peak or near high water mark of our grants that we were receiving in 2007. You can see there a long list, a lot of acronyms, but those are related to pre-disaster mitigation and Metro Medical Response Systems and Homeland Security grant programs, and a few others. Added all those up, we were managing 5 separate grants simultaneously for a little over $3 million. The vast majority of that, I would say everything except about $39,000 of that amount, was a pass-through through our agency that went to benefit local public safety and emergency response and support organizations. Some of those, there was actually statewide benefit through specialty teams. So a lot of activity in our grants back in 2007, a stark contrast to where we are now with the receipt of 2 grants of each of $39,000. So I bring that to everybody's attention to show, maybe some difference of what was going on in 2007 compared to now, but also to say how important it is and how much we appreciate the support of local governments and the 2080 agreement that we have among the commission members that provide that 50 cents per capita. Because without that, we'd be in a much different environment. So that local support is really what sustains the local programs and has a direct impact and we hope benefit to all of your jurisdictions. In our mission, as well as in our key principles, we talked about hazard analysis and risk assessment or being, prioritizing risk. We mention that because that really forms the foundation of everything else that our program is built on. The planning, the training, the exercise, the resource management, all of that has its grounding in the results of a hazard analysis and risk assessment. So you can see the methodology there on the right, but essentially what we're trying to do is prioritize risk and be able to be prepared for those highest risks that have the most impact on people and property and those vulnerable persons and properties. So, from here, that really provides that launching point to all of our other preparedness and response activities. One of the plans that we're responsible for that really consumes the results of that hazard analysis and risk assessment is our countywide hazard mitigation plan. We've been doing this since 1999. Our most recent version is 2019. And to complete that plan, there were 28 jurisdictions that participated, including city and county, cities and the county, as well as the school districts across Polk County. And if you take an investment view of this planning, it's resulted in over $25 million of projects coming to Polk County and the cities. And so a lot of the projects that you see going on across our community to either acquire property and move people and homes out of the floodway, maybe it's expanding storm sewers, it's building of safe rooms, other infrastructure protection and expansion projects, most likely has some of that funding received through the hazard mitigation grant program. And in order for those projects to be approved, they need to appear and be approved as a part of this plan. For more information on that hazard mitigation plan or to find out what projects your jurisdiction may have included in the latest version or subsequent amendments, you can find that on our webpage at polkcountyiowa.gov/emergency-management. And then you can navigate to the planning and find the multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan there. Another type of planning we do, which is more focused on the response and early recovery phases, is what's called a comprehensive emergency plan. This is more operational based. It is basically provides a level of understanding and documentation of what our expectations are of one another. It's very dependent upon an involved process so that it's not emergency management agency staff estimating what your expectations are and what your capabilities are, but we're simply facilitating a process and asking for your involvement to let us know what are your expectations, what can people expect of you during a disaster. So it's all designed to minimize those uncommunicated assumptions. And through that, we are better able to define roles, responsibilities, the laws and authorities, the restrictions, the opportunities, all of those things that provide that path from a bad situation to making it better. The framework that plan is built on, again, all hazards, it's capabilities based, which means that it's not written as a script that if this happens, then do X, Y, Z. It basically lays out almost a menu of choices, and we call those things capabilities that can be called upon because the reality is we live in an uncertain and multi-threat environment, which we have to be flexible enough to move between a derecho and a global pandemic happening at the same time. The next time it may be a tornado or a flash flood or cyber terrorism. That same plan applies, looks at those menu of capabilities and applies them where and when needed. This plan also has a return on investment. So it may be burdensome to participate in the planning process, but it makes it a little easier to do knowing that without this plan, the state cost share after a disaster is unavailable if we're not compliant. And so we ask you to participate, that we continue to have a compliant plan so that those federal disaster recovery dollars and state recovery dollars that are available after a presidentially declared disaster can offset some of the cost for you and your jurisdictions. As you might imagine, that plan is quite involved, quite voluminous. And so we find a way to break that down into specific chapters or what we call emergency support functions. These are simply collection of similar type capabilities. And I think once you see this list, you'll understand kind of what we're getting at and how we frame our comprehensive emergency plan. It's these 15 chapters that constitute the comprehensive emergency plan. Most of those are self-explanatory. There are some things such as donations management and volunteer management that are included in the plan. We include those in sort of a catch-all ESF 7, which is resource support. But everything else, that there's a home someplace in those 15 annexes. The other benefit here is that all of our neighbors across Iowa and in fact most of the country use this same structure, the same numerals to indicate ESF 12 as energy or ESF 6 as mass care. So this really increases our interoperability and mutual aid support amongst the emergency management community statewide and nationally. So the planning is important, but we always have to have an eye on, okay, how will we implement that plan? How will we execute the activities that are included in that plan? It really happens through two different mechanisms, and these two mechanisms are very closely related. And the first is the incident site, this incident command system that's used for field activities. This is the tactical and operational end. And those are the folks on the ground that are making decisions to save lives, save property, stabilize the incident. But there's also an opportunity for those incident commanders and those incident command systems in the field to receive support, coordination, or assistance and integration from the Emergency Operations Center. And so that's the relationship that we're trying to illustrate in this slide, where you see on the far left, there may be there may be multiple command posts. Again, this is the tactical and operational where everything really begins and ends. If those incident command posts need additional support, or there's multiple command posts in a single jurisdiction, for example, the city of Ankeny, or the city of Alleman, or the city of Elkhart, they have multiple incident command posts. They are able to form a jurisdictional area command, and then have that be the interface to the countywide EOC. So we really kind of see, even during the same disaster, based on the size of the community or what's all happening, a simultaneous combination of single incident command posts talking to the Polk County EOC, or the multiple command posts talking to a city's area command, and then that area command talking to the Polk County EOC. Regardless, it's the communication pathways that are critical to make this all work well, by sharing information about what's happening in the field and what support is available, allows everyone throughout this entire system to make better decisions. So not only are these communication pathways, but they're also pathways to request assistance. And that assistance could be in the form of a variety of different resources. And we'll touch on that in just a second. In terms of what is the purpose of the EOC, I think that some people that have not had an experience of being in the EOC or understanding what emergency management's purpose is, may have a hard time understanding, is that just another, why do we need to communicate with them? Why do we need to keep them informed? Because there's, some regional situational awareness that adds value to know what your neighbors are doing. It has an impact on regional resources that are available or unavailable. It's an ability to assist each other. It's to create a common operating picture so that there is some consistency that the public expects from us to be able to work together. And just a couple examples from COVID is that on the bottom left there, establishing the battle rhythm, Deanne led the planning section chief, the planning section as chief for almost 2 years. And through that process, facilitated over 150 meetings and briefings, again, to do these things you see on the screen here, to gain situational awareness, to make sure that we're objectively addressing issues and concerns, and that we are creating common operating picture so that there is some fairness to those that are asking for help, and prioritizing those requests and being able to work with scarce resources. So about the middle right on this slide, you see the utilize single point ordering. This is absolutely critical during an environment where we have scarce resources. And if you remember back a few months ago, where a lot of the PPE and other COVID related equipment and supplies was very limited, we had overwhelmingly more requests than resources initially. But as we started to build that cache of resources, we were able to use a single point ordering process, and Cameron and his team with logistics were able to distribute nearly 1 million items through more than 2,000 individual requests, and to do that in a way that vetted the request to make sure that there wasn't potential hoarding situations and that sort of thing. So just a little bit, I could probably talk for the whole day just on the EOC and purpose and value, but that's just a quick snapshot of what we do and our role as a strategic element of this relationship between those in the field doing tactics and operation, and the ability for them to receive some additional support through the Emergency Operations Center to access regional, state, federal resources, the private sector, many representatives here in the EOC, the National Weather Service, Mid-American Energy, all regional resources, so that those entities that I just named aren't bombarded by multiple requests. We can really consolidate those requests and make that information flow much more efficient. The term battle rhythm may be familiar to some, but probably not everyone. Really what that means is, what's our sequence, what's our roadmap? How often are we doing these things in order to be able to receive information, process and analyze that information, make decisions on that information, align resources with those requests, and get that information back out to everyone that could benefit from it. And so this battle rhythm, what we call the planning P, is done for every operational period, whether that's every 12 hours, every 24 hours, or once a week, or every 2 weeks, like we ended up with COVID. Regardless, that same process serves us very well to move from reactivity to proactivity. And in its simplest form, we're taking big, complex problems, breaking them down into smaller and smaller pieces by what we call objectives and subordinate strategies that align with those objectives to make those big problems solvable. And then once we have those situations broken down into those smaller pieces, those are problems that many of you on this call are solving every day. It just may be more intense, more of them, whatever, during a larger disaster. But that's really our purpose, is to make big problems into a series of smaller problems. And we use this process that you see on the screen to do that. And that way, this process also integrates information fed from the field and incident commanders, but also from the policy group. And so what we try to avoid is having the policy group, which needs to remain very high level, strategic and guiding, from getting into the weeds and getting into tactics. And the reverse can also be true, that it would be just as complicated and problemsome to have field operators making community-wide policy decisions. So this is the best system to have a lane assigned to everybody in this process. Field operators have a lane, that middle piece at the EOC, which is the interface between operations and the policy group, and then the policy group having another lane and being able to communicate across those lanes, but not step on each other's toes. It is not always a full activation of the EOC. In fact, the vast majority of the support that we provide through emergency management is done through our duty officer. Our duty officers are available around the clock all year long. We appreciate the Polk County Sheriff's Office serving as our hub of if we're needed, requested, if you're in the emergency response community and on the radio, can simply request that through whatever dispatch center, whatever PSAP you are affiliated with, eventually gets back to the Polk County Sheriff's Office and then to us. And so then we're able to make that connection with whoever is requesting us. We can be available just as a, hey, there's a heads up. We don't really need anything now, but just be aware this is occurring. We always appreciate that. So we're ready to react more quickly. Or we can be asked to come to the scene. Maybe it's just you need a couple extra things that we can make a phone call. It's really up to you as the requesting entity, what's the most helpful and what format that becomes. We have absolutely no problem with being called to the scene and just being, within arm's reach of the command post and sit there quietly unless we're needed, all the way up to, hey, just giving you a heads up. So several options there for you to access, our services and our support. Really find this slide to be very important. The definition of who the policy group is, we would say that the Emergency Management Commission is ultimately the policy group. That's who we answer to. And as you saw a few slides earlier, that commission is made up of representatives from the Board of Supervisors and the mayors. And so we can extend that down to the council members as well as city and county administrators and managers. That group provides some very important information and guidance to the process. And so what we would ask for from the EOC manager or the EOC in general is what is the intent? What, as this policy group, what do you want to see? What are the priorities that reflect what you expect and what your citizens expect? And so those provide us what we call guiding objectives. And then we can sort of make those guiding objectives into more operational objectives and then work with representatives from a variety of different groups to understand what is operationally and tactically available or valid. And so that's, again, how we can use the three separate lanes to collect the information, make decisions that are appropriate for all the stakeholders involved, the policy group, the EOC, as well as field commanders. So that policy group's involvement is absolutely necessary to make sure that we are doing what's in the best interest of the entire community. We look for that participation at the EOC during the disaster, but I'll tell you it's even more important and more useful when we can have those discussions prior to the disaster, because that input will feed the planning process, and Deanne will talk to you about how that information feeds the training and exercise process so that we're all as prepared and we're not surprised by those uncommunicated assumptions. We'll shift gears just a little bit, talk about DLAN. I know many of you are familiar. You probably received the invitation to participate in this webinar through DLAN. It's more than just our email system. It provides a ticket management system, which is accountability of if somebody calls in or radios into the EOC and says, I need this by this time. Here's your point of contact to follow up on that. And what's the status of us, the EOC, completing that request? All can be tracked within Ticket Manager, within DLAN. It provides a documentation library. It provides documentation of decisions made. So sometimes there are very expensive decisions that are made that we're acquiring expensive resources and that will eventually be asking the state and FEMA for reimbursement. That's the documentation we need to validate that reimbursement. This is also, Cameron, every year works with many of you to update the resource library, our resource management process through what we call resource typing. All of that information is managed within the system so that any of us can simply, if somebody asks for a search dog or an ATV or a team or a, whatever it might be, we can just by keyword find that resource in this library, find out who owns it, their point of contact, and then act as a broker to match up those that are asking for it with those that may have it and agree to provide it. I promised you I'd come back and talk about how we define resources. You see the list here. It's the people, it's teams, it's equipment, supplies, information, facilities, and systems. But always, most importantly, it's the people and the teams. And again, Deanne will talk about why we always start with people and teams as our most important resource. But we think of resources very broadly. And a lot of times it's combination of these things that actually put together a package that we call a capability. The resource management process, again, this is a topic that we could spend hours on. We won't subject you to all of that discussion, but just wanted to put this slide here and have a quick moment to talk about how important it is to really do the resource management process prior to the disaster, because at 2:30 in the morning, how do you find an item, a team or people that you don't yet know about? It's after hours, so you can't just call the main number. So there's just a lot of stuff that goes into all of us doing our homework so that when it's needed, we have all of the information available and can act quickly on receiving the request, processing the request, and providing that resource. If you're keeping track, this is our third type of planning that we do. This is event action planning. This is for, prior to those events that occur in all of your communities, such as the State Fair, Ironman, whether it's local festivals or Drake Relays, the Dew Tour this last year. There's a number of runs across the community, the Dam to Des Moines and others that are traversing your communities, and multiple jurisdictions, multiple entities involved. And so the coordination is extremely important. We don't, ever like to hear, well, we just hope that won't happen, or, we've been lucky there hasn't been this, everything's been fine in the past. And we hope it stays that way. Our objective is always to have a safe and enjoyable event, but safe comes first. And we want to make sure that we have these contingency plans and relationships in place. And you know what, if we don't have to use it, that's wonderful. But the public expects us to work together and be prepared so that if there's an incident that occurs at an event, that we're not all trying to figure that out on the fly. All right, Deanne.
Thanks, AJ. So all this planning that's occurred, those plans do us no good if they remain on a shelf or an electronic folder and we don't do our due diligence and provide some training. It is an investment to send people to training, and it does take a lot of time to train people up. But without doing that, there is no competency being built. So equated to a football team, you're not going to have a book of plays that you don't share with your players as they go out onto the field for game day. While we train on plans, but you can see from the list at the bottom that we also train on broad stroke type of things as well. So it fits any type of hazard that we might be exposed to. Again, relating it back to a football team, you'd want to maybe do some training on agility so that no matter if you're playing offense or defense, that you have that broad skill to bring to the game day. Can you back up one more? Thanks. Oh, okay. Also, we want to make sure that we reinforce that our training is also focused on not only the elected officials and the decision makers within the jurisdictions, but also the other end of the scope to the community, and that we're all here to learn what we can do. So when we do have a gray cloud stormy day, that we're all ready to do what we need to do. So the next phase in this is to exercise those plans and verify those plans, and also validate the training that was conducted. Again, back to the football team, you are not going to, if you don't practice those plans, you're not going to be able to execute during the game day. So exercises are a very gradual process and we're very methodical about which ones we choose. Sometimes in the process, we get to an exercise, we find a lot of gaps, then we go back to the planning phase, then we train again, and then we validate again through another exercise. Okay, next slide. Then the last step is that we analyze and we analyze and we analyze. What went well? What do we need to maybe write into the plans that we need to keep acting on? But mostly, how can we fix those things that didn't go so well and really figure out and talk about and think about why things went well, number one, but why didn't they go well? And what are the realistic steps that we can do to make sure that we make those improvements? Is it a plan? Is it a training? Is it equipment? Is it a policy? Those kinds of things. And then we prioritize those needs and put them into action and hopefully get those completed. But root cause is really important. It's key to making improvements along the way, building those competencies. And then in the end, it really feeds back into that preparedness cycle and starting all over again.
Thank you, Deanne. So the window that the public has into what we all do, usually occurs through the media, some media, the traditional media, social media, more and more today. But regardless, we owe the public insight into what we're doing. That also helps, I think, stabilize and minimize additional risk to the community. And so when the EOC is activated, we often have a joint information center activated where our public information officers can come together and coordinate among themselves to have access to the information in firsthand. That way they're able to chase down rumors, to put out additional information, to work together to make sure that the, sorry, they just reminded me I was off camera, which is just fine with me, but maybe a little confusing. So I lost my train of thought. That the public information officers working together, really, they can chase down those rumors, validate information, and get information out. And it also allows them to provide that joint press conference and other things where we really have everybody standing, shoulder to shoulder. The community, I think studies have shown that the community enjoys seeing that their community is working together, that if it's a multidisciplinary complex incident, that people are working together, that we don't have somebody off doing one thing which may seem to contradict, information they're getting from another source. So this is very important, and all of you have an understanding of that. And so we deliver that out through an activated EOC using a joint information center. But during Blue Sky Days, we have a great opportunity here in the metro area to meet amongst public information officers as well as members of the media every other month at a Metro Media Council meeting. Really an opportunity to do what Deanne was just talking about is to say, hey, what that last incident we had, what worked well, what did not, and to continue to improve our relationships and understanding of the dual, we share the same goal, but we have different positions on the team to play. So now we'll get over to Tracy and she can talk about some 911 matters.
Thank you, AJ. The Emergency Management Commission and the 911 Service Board work very, very closely together. As AJ said, that the Emergency Management Commission is governed by Iowa Code Chapter 29C. This 911 Service Board is governed by Iowa Code Chapter 34A. Chapter 34A explains that our County Board of Supervisors are required to maintain a joint 911 Service Board. Membership is slightly different and voting privileges are slightly different than the commission. It's based on political subdivision, as we'll discuss on the next slide, but it's based on voting. You vote not based on your agency, but on the political subdivision that you serve. The only exception is the sheriff of a PSAP, so Polk County Sheriff's Office, the police chief of a PSAP, which would be Des Moines Public Safety Answering Point, and the emergency manager. They can all vote based on their position. We are required to maintain a service plan, and the service board also has an authority to distribute funds. As you can see here, our service area for the 911 Service Board reaches beyond the county lines. So we have an exception filed with the State Program Manager of Iowa Homeland Security to have a service area that extends. Westcom, Des Moines Police Department, and Polk County all serve outside the county lines. We just established a 911 Service Board Executive Committee. We have Supervisor Robert Brunel and Fire Chief Rick Rowe serving as the chairperson and vice chairperson respectively. We also have representatives from each PSAP, and so we have Des Moines Police Department, Polk County Sheriff's Office, and Westcom, and I serve as the staff for the 911 Service Board. We also meet 4 times a year, just like the Emergency Management Commission. We meet at 12:30 p.m. Our 911 Service Board advisory committees are the Metro Interoperability Committee and the PSAP Advisory Committee. We follow the bylaws in terms of membership and discuss issues involving communications and other interoperable issues. And the PSAP Advisory Committee, mainly issues involving the PSAPs. I'm going to turn it over to Dutch Geisinger. He's going to discuss some exciting changes ahead for our public safety answering points in relation to CAD to CAD, as he was a project manager for this special project.
Thank you, Tracy. A lot of times, and actually most times for most of us, when we call 911, we don't know what happens behind the scenes. All we know is that someone comes to help us afterward. The project that we're talking about right now involves the computer-aided dispatch systems that are used with our PSAPs that Tracy discussed earlier. And PSAP stands for Public Safety Answering Point. A lot of us know them as dispatch centers. In Polk County and our surrounding community, we have 6 different of those PSAPs with 5 different systems that they use. Traditionally, the way that they've communicated together has been through a phone call from one PSAP to another. If they had to dispatch somebody to assist another unit or to assist somebody in trouble that's outside their geographic area. What this opportunity happens to give us is a real-time information sharing and an opportunity to identify the closest units and dispatch those units to an emergency situation. Back in August, we were provided an opportunity to apply for, and we received $4.97 million toward this project. We were able to bring together a work group very quickly of those PSAP directors, organizations that support those PSAPs, technical experts and others, to help us identify how we can use that money to more effectively dispatch law enforcement agencies, fire departments in our communities. So we've divided that into 3 basic areas. Equipment is one of them. We had some older equipment that was not compatible with what we were trying to do. We were able to replace roughly $2 million worth of equipment. We were able to bring on a consultant to talk about what a common CAD might look like. So rather than having those 5 different systems, we would have a single system that we used within our community, and what that governance would look like when we got all those agencies together. One of the biggest components of this, and one of the best things that we're looking forward to, is that real-time information sharing. Rather than time delay when we had to have one PSAP call another to share information, and taking a chance that the information wasn't relayed correctly or there was a little bit of a miscommunication. Now we have that real-time information that the caller that took that pushes it out to all of the PSAPs at the same time. It's a great opportunity. We worked really closely with a lot of our partners, like I said, and with the state of Iowa and our federal partners. So this is something that we're really looking forward to, and we see that coming to fruition in the next few months. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, AJ.
All right, thanks. Just a real quick look back at 2021. There were several portions of the Comprehensive Emergency Plan that were updated. We provided event action planning support to the Iowa State Fair, Ironman, and Principal Charity Classic. A lot of people very busy with exercises, the Des Moines International Airport, a very complex exercise, full scale, that occurs every 3 years. We also had staff involved in an Ironman tabletop exercise. The Dutch was participated along with law enforcement and fire and EMS on a line of duty death tabletop exercise. Cameron led a LEPC, which is hazardous materials focused tabletop exercise and an active threat exercise. A very busy year of response operations. The bolded, the winter storm and derecho and the COVID pandemic, both multiple operational periods. And so those were a lot of times happening simultaneously. Very busy training year as well. A lot of focus on incident command, EOC, situational awareness, and de-escalation. We keep coming back to partnerships, to trust, to relationships, to meeting with one another and understanding each other's roles and responsibilities better. There's a list of our the meetings that we attend on a monthly or semi-monthly basis. Some of the other activities was the development of a field operations guide focused on line of duty deaths. Again, one we hope never to use, but our experience tells us otherwise, sadly. Looking into our crystal ball for 2022, our comprehensive emergency plan will have several sections updated. Another busy year of planned events, multiple exercises on the books, and I'm sure that number will grow. We don't know what the end of the year numbers will look like, but we know that as of February 1st, we're ahead of that trend line from last year. So expect another busy year on response. Always trying to do better at sharing information with the public. Our development of job aids, we hope to get those out in a digital, easy to access mobile environment. We know our state and federal mandates will stay the same or increase. Our training will be very busy. Deanne can close out with some items for you there, but we have an EOC operations course that was full, 45 seats full within just a couple days after opening for registration. So we know there's some other demand out there for that type of training. And so one of the things we're going to do is plan for a EOC mini courses, which will be broken down into 1 or 2 hour, a smaller period of time, but do that on maybe a monthly basis just to build on that over time. And again, our relationships, we honored to be just at the table and learning what everybody else is doing so that we can be a better integrator, a better coordinator, and a better support element for all of you. As we close out, just wanted to provide a little bit of news on our EOC technology upgrade. The Board of Supervisors, we appreciate their recognition in their distribution of ARPA funds, close to a little over $500,000, excuse me, for equipment upgrades. Our current EOC equipment dates back to 2009, so much of that equipment was reaching its end of life. Plus, we've learned a lot of great lessons from COVID on how we can have a better user experience, how we can do that information sharing more efficiently, how we can recognize, in-person, hybrid, virtual meetings. So there's a lot that technology will be able to help us with, and we're excited to get that project underway here in just a couple weeks and hope that that's completed and you are all benefiting from that one way or another within a month or so. We'll close there, and we hope that there would be some questions or comments. And Chief DeKip, if you want to provide some closing comments while people get their questions together.
Sure. Thanks, AJ. I appreciate the presentation and the presentations. AJ and the staff really do a tremendous job. And I'm biased but accurate in saying we have the best emergency management agency in the state. We're really well served. But as people think of questions, the seed I want to plant is you don't have to get all your questions answered today. As we go through different kinds of events, it might spark some questions for you, or you might have some actions to take, and the whole team is a resource for you. There's 3 quick scenarios that I like to kind of throw out as examples of how everything you've heard today actually is put in action. One is the fire in the middle of the evening, where this process is how we help people that are displaced by a fire get someplace safe and warm at night. Another is, and that's in our own jurisdiction, another is we get 6 inches of rain, and in real time, this process helps us keep a situational awareness as we're crossing each other's borders to help all of the different residents and our constituents that we have. But the third one, and for you as policy members, is that more rare scenario where a tornado touches down and crosses over and does some kinds of damage where all of a sudden, instead of just being an independent jurisdiction serving your constituents, within about 12 hours, you're going to have to come together to talk about debris management and picking up the trash to let 400,000 people know across a couple of TV and radio stations one message that you've come to together. And that's really where the rubber hits the road as a policy group. And so it's good to think through those things and do some what ifing and reach out to the staff to ask questions. But I appreciate all this. I appreciate your participation in our meeting today. And I'll hand it back to you, AJ.
Thanks, Chief. Any questions from the group? I see we still have 15 or so people on. We'd love to hear what you're thinking.
While they're thinking, AJ, I just want to throw out my commercial that you may have received a DLAN message from me that is providing you guys an opportunity to complete a training and exercise needs assessment. So without your input, we're kind of one-sided knowing what your needs are out there. So if you could take the time to finish that assessment, then we can take that information and analyze it and come up with some priorities that will help us better use our time to get you better prepared so we can help each other on those gray sky days.
Absolutely. Any other questions from the group, comments, ideas? Anything you wished we would have covered but failed to do?